Part 9. The space doctor became the favorite of the exiled powerful minister. Author, Fengyuan Kandi. Chapter 81. After Zhang Ziluo figured it out, her expression softened, she shook her head and said, "I've slept well, no need to sleep more. I'll get up first." With that said, Zhang Ziluo got up and got out of bed to wash up. Kui Hejin also got up. While Zhang Ziluo was washing in the yard, Kui Hejin told Mrs. Kui about the location of the homestead. Kui Hejin comforted Mrs. Kui, and Mrs. Kui was no longer worried about her safety. "Well, you should spend more time with Ziluo on weekdays and go home early after class. Ziluo will feel safer if you stay with her. Women, they still want their husbands to be by their side." Mrs. Kui gave Kui Hejin advice based on her own experience. Kui Hejin glanced at Zhang Ziluo, who was busy in the yard, and felt that she had a different temperament from her mother. She may not need companionship like her mother does. Zhang Ziluo naturally didn't know this. While having breakfast, Mrs. Kui said, "Ziluo, after thinking about it, I will build the homestead behind the village as you said. It will be safer if Hejin goes home early after school." "No, mother, do you have some misunderstanding about safety?" Zhang Ziluo blinked and glanced at Kui Hejin, not knowing how he convinced her mother. "Mom, since we have decided this way, after dinner, we will go to Uncle Li Zheng to measure the land, so that we can go to the Yamen early to get the land deed. Only the red deed that has been stamped by the Yamen is the real land deed, and it is guaranteed to be held in your hand." Mrs. Kui nodded and said, "Okay, earlier. While the weather is warm, we can find someone to build the house early. In half a month, everyone will be busy farming." From mid to late March to April, the villagers began to be busy planting wheat, corn, peanuts, vegetables, and other crops. Since March has just entered and everyone is not so busy, you can hire people from the village to help build a house. Hire more people and it can be built sooner. Since they have decided to buy land, Zhang Ziluo and Mrs. Kui will not go to the town to set up a stall selling chai boxes that day. After breakfast, it was still a little early, so Kui Hejin accompanied Zhang Ziluo and Mrs. Kui to Li Zheng's house. As soon as they reached the door, they heard a loud voice inside. "What? It actually costs 6 taels of silver. Our village girls don't ask for such expensive gifts." 6 taels of silver, how dare you ask for it? This was Zhu's voice in shock and disbelief. Another woman said, "Don't worry. This girl is indeed a flower in the village. She is pretty and capable. Her parents have agreed to give her a bride price of at least 6 taels of silver. The bride price is a bit expensive, but marrying your Joseoxi, a beautiful and virtuous daughter-in-law, and watching them live a good life will make you feel comfortable." Mr. Zhu said with a headache, "The key is that my family can't afford 6 taels of silver." Zhu Shi discussed in a low voice, "Can't 2 taels of silver work?" "Oh, don't be fooled by the amount of bride price that the Kui family in your village spends on marrying a daughter-in-law nowadays. Any family that is good-looking and capable of working will not ask for a lot of bride price when marrying a daughter. The conditions in your village are poor, the land is sparse and barren. You will know if you ask around. Many families are not willing to marry their daughters to your village, so the bride price must be at least 4 taels of silver." Mrs. Zhu said in a low voice, "Hey, I just said that Ziluo's child is good, and the Zhang family is also a good family. Who would have thought that Ziluo's child would like the Kui family's child?" Zhu originally planned to tell it to his son. "She likes Ziluo from the bottom of her heart. Although I looked a little stupid and not very smart in the past, I am a nice person. But now the more I look at it, the more I feel that this child has grown up, as if he has suddenly become enlightened and understands more." Zhang Ziluo was listening at the door, wondering why she was involved, and couldn't help but twitch the corner of her mouth. Mrs. Kui sighed inwardly. Fortunately, she had asked her son to marry Ziluo back earlier. As for the emotion in Kui Hejin's eyes, no one knows. Zhang Ziluo was next to him and always felt that there was a chill coming from him. She didn't know if it was an illusion. Zhang Ziluo felt a little embarrassed and thought about going home first. At this time, someone from the village went up the mountain and passed by. When they saw Ms. Kui and her family, they smiled and said, "Hello, Sister Kui, you are looking for Li Zhang. They are at home, why don't you come in?" People in the village are naturally loud when speaking. Perhaps some young women speak softly at first, but after staying in the village for a few years, their voices become louder. This statement was heard by everyone in the courtyard. "Hurry out of the house. Oh, Sister Kui, he Jinji Luo, you are here." The other woman may have felt that it was not the right time to stay and talk, so she said hello to Ms. Zhu and left. Zhu Shi warmly entertained Ms. Kui and the others. Ms. Zhu was shocked when she learned that she was going to buy a 1-acre homestead, but she came to her senses in a flash and shouted toward the back room, "Zaya, go to the fields and call your father back." After a while, a young boy ran out, politely called Ms. Kui and the others, and then ran out. Mr. Zhu poured water for Ms. Kui and the others, and chatted with them. Soon, Li Zhang came back with a hoe. Li Zhang said excitedly, "Nephew Kui Xian, do you really want to buy the homestead behind the village, buy an acre of land? But let me tell you first, we villagers don't like to buy land behind that, across the valley, and even if the land over there is enclosed for planting something, the land is very barren and not suitable for growing things. And the price is not cheap, 4 taels of silver per acre of homestead land, which is also the price set by the county government. Because of this, that piece of land was planned as a homestead. They are all from the same village, and Li was thinking of telling them about the situation first. Kui Hejin said softly, "Thank you Uncle Joe for informing us, but we still decided to buy a 1-acre homestead there. We may need to ask Uncle Joe to help us measure it." Looking at the Kui family's decision, Zhou Zhen couldn't say anything else. "Okay, I'll take you to the measuring field at the back and help you measure a good place." "Thank you, Uncle Joe. We are from the same village, and our two families are close to each other, so there is no need to say these things." Zhou Zhen was also happy for the Kui family. He did not expect that the Kui family would be able to buy their own homestead and build a house so soon. After measuring the land, it was time for Kui Hejin to go to school. Kui Hejin went to town with Zhang Ziluo. Zhang Ziluo also needs to take the braised pig meat she cooked last night so that she can put it on consignment at Lin Zuzu's meat stall. But with Kui Hejin accompanying her, it was inconvenient for her to make room. "I was a little worried about what to do, but Zhou Zioxi drove an ox cart over," he said enthusiastically and cheerfully. "Brother Kui, Sister Zhang, I heard from my parents that you are going to the town, and I happen to be going to the town too. By the way, I'll take you with me." Zhang Ziluo looked at Kui Hejin and found that his expression was not strange, so she nodded and said, "Thank you so much, Brother Zhou." As soon as Zhang Ziluo finished saying this, she heard Kui Hejin cough. Ahem, end of this chapter. The space doctor became the favorite of the exiled powerful minister. Author, Fenyuan Kandi. Chapter 82. Zhang Ziluo became nervous as soon as she heard Kui Hejin coughing. "What's wrong, are you suddenly feeling unwell?" Zhang Ziluo couldn't care about anything else at this time. She put the marinated bucket in her hand on the ground, then went to support Kui Hejin and pat his back gently. "I should be feeling much better after taking medicine recently. Why are you coughing so hard?" Kui Hejin kept coughing for a while. Zhang Ziluo was confused and worried. As Zhang Ziluo spoke, she wanted to reach out and check Kui Hejin's pulse. Zhou Zioxi was also stunned. He knew that Brother Kui was in poor health, but seeing him coughing like this made him feel so fragile. Zhou Zioxi came back to his senses and hurriedly stepped forward and said, "Brother Kui, why don't I send you to the medical clinic in the town for a checkup?" Kui Hejin said coldly, It's okay, just take a rest and you'll be fine. Zhang Ziluo said, how about I go to the school to ask for leave for you? Kui Hejin, as elegant and calm as ever, said, no, I'm fine. Maybe it will be better if I take a walk for a while. Zhang Ziluo thought for a moment, and indeed, sometimes it was better for Kui Hejin to move than to sit motionless. She looked at Zhou Zioxi's ox cart and said, Brother Zhou, could you please do me a favor? Sister Zhang, you don't need to be polite to me if you have anything to do, just tell me. Zhou Zioxi looked very upright and cheerful. Zhang Ziluo looked at Zhou Zioxi's sunny and handsome appearance and sighed in her heart. If this was the case in modern times, even a sunny boy who plays basketball would be very popular among girls in school. But here, 16-year-old Zhou Zioxi is about to get married. After hearing those words in the morning, I knew that Mr. Zhu was worried about the bride price. Similarly, the conditions of the villagers in Donghe village are not very good. Not to mention 6 taels of silver, there are very few who can spare 2 taels of silver. Every household in the village lives frugally and can only keep themselves alive, without having enough to eat. Zhou Zioxi always felt that the way Sister Zhang looked at him was a little strange. Sister Zhang, is there something on my face? Zhang Ziluo shook her head and said, Brother Zhou, I heard Aunt Zhu say that she wants to marry you a wife. Don't you have your own ideas? Zhou Zioxi was still an innocent young man, and his face suddenly turned red. Sister Zhang, I don't have much idea. You are a man, how can you not have your own ideas? Zhou Zioxi became serious now and said, I just want to marry a virtuous wife with a good temper and I will treat her well. I won't marry you if the bride price is expensive. Zhou Zioxi probably knew what his mother said to someone that morning. His younger brother told him. He guessed that Sister Zhang might have heard it. So I added an additional explanation. If I earn money myself and I think it's good and I can spend it, I will marry. But if my parents have to lose half their lives to get the money, I can't be selfish and willful. If all the villages had 6 taels of silver, I wouldn't say anything. But in other villages, it's only 2 or 3 taels, or 4 taels at most, but in our village it's only 6 taels. This made Zhou Zioxi feel a little depressed, but he was unable to resist anything. Zhang Ziluo also felt a little powerless. Similarly, in the eyes of people in Shiliba village, Donghe village is a remote small village, incomparable to other large villages, and its conditions are also incomparable. The land around their village is sparse and somewhat barren. In fact, in Zhang Ziluo's opinion, Donghe village is really good. Although the village is small, everyone is very simple and will help each other if any family has difficulties. Have a good heart and simple folk customs. There is no clique. In some large villages, some people have one surname and one clan, and there are fights between them. Brother Zhou, don't worry. You have to believe that you are good. There will be good girls who like you regardless of these things. Zhou Zioxi blushed when Zhang Ziluo was so relieved. But while talking, Zhang Ziluo also asked Zhou Zioxi to help deliver the braised meat to Lin Zuzu's meat stall. However, Zhou Zioxi didn't know about Lin Zuzu's butcher stall, so Zhang Ziluo told her how to get there. Zhou Zioxi said seriously, Sister Zhang, don't worry, I will bring the things. Zhang Ziluo nodded. She then went into the house and poured hot water, added some spiritual spring water, came out and handed it to Kui Hejin and said, drink some water first, and rest before we go to town. After Kui Hejin drank some water, he felt much better and said, I'm fine. Let's go. Confirming that Kui Hejin looked nothing strange, the two of them went to the town together. Kui Hejin went to school, and Zhang Ziluo went to the yamen to do business. As soon as the people from the yamen heard that it was Zhang Ziluo, they immediately said respectfully, Miss Zhang, please sit down for a while, we will get it done right away. They were told by the county magistrate's daughter that if Miss Zhang Ziluojiang and her family came to handle matters, they must handle them well and have a good attitude. Said this was her benefactor. They dare not neglect once they hear the name. Besides, this Miss Zhang is quite famous. Previously, we attacked the Songji grain store. After the Song Er Gongza was arrested, he was interrogated and investigated by the county magistrate, and the grain store was also closed down. Now the people of the Song family no longer dare to be arrogant and domineering in their county. They all discussed it privately and said that Miss Zhang is a capable person and should not be offended. They worked very neatly and quickly handed over the red deed of the land deed to Zhang's Hiluo. Mrs. Zhang, take a look, is there any problem? Zhang's Hiluo looked at it and said with a smile, it's no problem. Thank you very much, brother. Speaking, Zhang's Hiluo handed them the refreshments and a small jar of wine that she had bought earlier. Thank you for your hard work, big brothers. The people from the yamen hurriedly declined, but Zhang's Hiluo also sincerely gave it to them, put it down, and left. The people who worked in the yamen felt very comfortable and said, this Miss Zhang really knows how to handle things. She doesn't look like a country girl based on her conversational skills. No wonder we, Miss Jian, are friends with her and have repeatedly told her that she is both her benefactor and her friend. We cannot neglect her. When Zhang's Hiluo came out of the yamen, it was still a little early. She walked around the town and saw the sealed grain store again. She knew that the Song family was under investigation when she came to town to set up a stall, and she also knew that the grain store had been closed down by the county government and was about to be transferred out. But she didn't have much money to buy this grain store. The location of this store is excellent. It would be great if you want to open a store and do some business. But buying a store costs at least 100 taels of silver. This is not something Zhang's Hiluo can think about now. Zhang's Hiluo went to the market to take a look and found that there were more people setting up stalls to buy vegetable cakes today, and there was also one selling braised pig offal. They did not come to set up stalls, and people visiting the market were not affected. Zhang's Hiluo's expression changed. It seems we can't just do the chai box business anymore, we can try making bibimbap sauce. Yes, Zhang's Hiluo plans to make bibimbap sauce. In the technological age, there is a kind of chili sauce that goes very well with rice, whether eaten with steamed buns or rice. Just when Zhang's Hiluo was trying to figure out what was going on and was about to go to the grocery store, she suddenly saw a familiar figure of a woman. Her eyes moved. Isn't that Miss Chen Huidi in the dream? End of chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The space doctor became the favorite of the exiled powerful minister. Author, Fenyuan Candy. Chapter 83. Chapter 83 Disguise. Zhang's Hiluo's expression was condensed. Seeing Chen Huidi leading the maid into the rouge shop next to her, she also turned around and followed him in. Zhang's Hiluo pretended to look at some rouge and gouache in the store, but her ears were sensitive to the sound. The maid next to Chen Huidi said with some resentment, Miss, do you really want to be with that Mr. Kui? How can a countryman like him be worthy of a young lady? Chen Huidi looked calm and said, that Kui Hejin is indeed unworthy of his status, but if he can get the honors, he can be in the eyes of my Chen family. The maid said in surprise, Miss, Mr. Kui looks so deserted and hard to talk to. Does he know how to take the scientific examination? As she said that, she was still a little worried and asked, I don't know how knowledgeable he is. Chen Huidi said, he used to come to the bookstore to deliver copied books. His calligraphy was so good that even my father was amazed. A person who can write well must also have good knowledge. If he takes the scientific examination, he should also be able to obtain fame. Although a person like him is as cold as a piece of ice, once it melts, it will be different. The more such a person is, the more likely he is to be cold on the outside and hot on the inside once he is attracted to someone. he is likely to become crazy. And he looks like a who doesn't eat fireworks. If he becomes crazy and infatuated with me, it will be an extremely successful thing. When Chen Huidi said this, he looked arrogant and proud. It seems that Kui Hejin is a sure winner. Moreover, when she thought about a man who was so cold and godlike, if she was really attracted to him, he would really love him to the core. The maid also said proudly, in our entire county, we can't find anyone as talented, knowledgeable, and beautiful as the young lady. So Master Kui is naturally attracted to the young lady. It's just Miss, what should Wei Xiao do? Young Master Wei is also infatuated with Miss. And I heard that although young Master Wei runs an agency, his family is from a wealthy family in the capital. If Miss Wei joins young Master Wei, her status will be even more different. Chen Huidi said, Wei Xingyi is only 16 years old. He travels all the time with the agency. His temperament is unstable. He seems to be infatuated with me, but in fact he may not be sincere. Besides, the head of the Wei family is an aristocratic family. Even if Wei Xingyi and the other branches only live in this county, the Wei family also pays attention to family background, and the Chen family may not be able to win the attention of the Wei family. But if I approach Kui Hejin and act infatuated, I might be able to irritate Wei Xingyi. If Wei Xingyi can compete with the family for me, I can also join the Wei family, and the Chen family will also have connections with the Wei family. The maid said with admiration, young lady is still very foresighted. The book says this is it called killing two birds with one stone? The two masters and servants were still scheming in low voices. They spoke in very low voices, and they didn't seem to notice Zhang Ziluo, who was deliberately hiding her breath. Of course they thought that their voices were so quiet that no one would hear them since there was no one in the store. But Zhang Ziluo has some wood-type supernatural powers. By adjusting her body's power, she can hear their quiet voices. Hearing this, Zhang Ziluo's lips curved in a sarcastic arc, and her expression became even colder. You don't have to think about it, this is a green tea white lotus. Zhang Ziluo was worried that Chen Huidi was plotting against Kui Hejin, so she secretly followed Chen Huidi. Chen Huidi bought rouge and gouache and then returned to the Chen family's residence with her maid. At almost noon, Chen Huidi changed into a dress and dressed up. The whole person looks weaker and frilier. As for her maid, she walked in the other direction. Zhang Ziluo narrowed her eyes and didn't care what the maid did. She only needs to follow Chen Huidi to prevent Kui Hejin from being plotted. As expected, Chen Huidi came to the outside of Shishi Academy with a basket, but she did not stand directly outside the school, but found a shaded and remote place to wait. This scene is the same as what Zhang Ziluo saw in her dream. Even the clothes Chen Huidi wore, the basket she held in her hands, and the place where she waited were the same. This made Zhang Ziluo even more frightened. She is not worried about what Chen Huidi does. With Kui Hejin's cold demeanor, he definitely couldn't do anything like flirting with a girl at the school gate. She was mainly worried that Chen Huidi was plotting against Kui Hejin, and that Mr. Wei from the agency would lead someone to attack Kui Hejin. She wanted to prevent those people from doing anything to Kui Hejin. Soon, it was time for classes to end at Shi Mo Academy. Kui Hejin remembered that Ziluo and her mother would have lunch at home, so he planned to go home at noon. Because he was going back to Donghe village, he walked towards the east alley. This direction was different from the direction that the students in the school went, and it was a bit remote. As soon as he walked into the alley, Chen Huidi walked out with a basket. She looked at Kui Hejin with eyes that were about to cry, Master Kui. There was a twist in her voice, and she was still unable to speak, as if she was hiding endless thoughts and grievances. Zhang Ziluo tried hard to hide her breath in the dark, and when she heard this tone, the corners of her mouth twitched hard. If he hadn't just heard what she said to the maid, Zhang Ziluo would have really thought that she was infatuated with Kui Hejin. Kui Hejin suddenly saw Chen Huidi. He frowned slightly, stepped back a few steps, keeping a safe distance, and then said coldly, "Does this young lady know Kui?" Chen Huidi was almost shaken when she heard Kui Hejin's strange words. "Mr. Kui, it's me. My father runs a bookstore. You often go to the bookstore. Have you forgotten?" Chen Huidi was secretly resentful. She never expected that Kui Hejin didn't recognize her. Did he not recognize her when she changed her headdress with rouge and gouache? Kui Hejin really doesn't pay much attention to this Miss Chen. "Ms. Chen, what's the matter? Is there something wrong with the books Kui copied before?" It is not impossible for the bookstore to embarrass the scholar on the grounds that there are problems in copying the books. Looking at Kui Hejin's alert look, Chen Huidi almost lost his breath. But Chen Huidi knew his purpose and was good at forbearing. The more cold and indifferent Kui Hejin is, the more she wants him to be moved by her and become gentle. Chen Huidi could only swallow those calculating words, and could only look at Kui Hejin with a pair of infatuated eyes and said, "I know Mr. Kui is trapped in life now. Although my Chen family is not a wealthy family, there are quite a lot of people in the family assets. The library even contains a large collection of books." Chen Huidi first talked about the advantages of the Chen family. Throwing out the bait, he stared at Kui Hejin's expression and said in a seductive manner, "I know that Mr. Kui has a deep heart and is quite talented. The Chen family is willing to help Mr. Kui to obtain scholars through the imperial examination, gain fame, and make contributions to his career." Of course, Chen Huidi's fascinated look was not an act. This man's demeanor and appearance alone were enough to make people addicted. It's a pity that she is the daughter of the Chen family. What she wants more in her eyes is glory and wealth. Even though her family opened a bookstore and had a bit of a literati vibe, to put it bluntly, she was still a businessman, and businessmen had a low status. If you want to climb up, you can only squeeze into the ranks of the gentry. Kui Hejin's picturesque and narrow phoenix eyes were slightly narrowed, and the tail of his eyes was raised, with a cold light. "How did Miss Chen know that I was talented and learned, so why did she want to help me get a scholar through the imperial examination?" End of this chapter. The space doctor became the favorite of the exiled powerful minister. Author, Fenyuan Kandi. Chapter 84. At this moment, the aura around Kui Hejin became even colder. Anyone who knew him well knew that there was a dangerous coldness in his eyes at this moment. He is guarded and cold, as if there is a sharp blade hidden under his clean aura, ready to kill with bloodthirsty at any time. He can be as cold and gentle as a one moment, and as dark as a sure the next. At this moment, Kui Hejin suspected that Miss Chen was someone sent by the capital to test him. Chen Huidi didn't know what was going on, but with just a simple sentence, she felt that there was endless pressure hidden in Mr. Kui, which made a chill run down her back. Chen Huidi looked at Kui Hejin's gentle and scholarly look and felt that it might have been her illusion just now. She suppressed her beating heart and said with a shy expression, "To be honest with Mr. Kui, I admire Mr. Kui. If Mr. Kui obtains a good name, he can be my Chen family's son-in-law." Hearing these words, Kui Hejin chuckled softly, his voice was slightly cold, and when he heard it, he felt a chill running through his body. Chen Huidi has never seen Kui Hejin smile since she met Kui Hejin several times at the bookstore. When she heard his laughter, she was stunned. Kui Hejin said coldly every word, "Then I really have to thank Miss Chen for taking it seriously. But I may disappoint Miss Chen, I already have a wife." Chen Huidi went back to worship her ancestors during this period, but she didn't even know that Kui Hejin was getting married. How could it be? How could you get married all of a sudden? Is someone forcing you? Kui Hejin said coldly, "Miss Chen and I are neither relatives nor old acquaintances, so naturally there is no need to report anything to Miss Chen. What's more, I have never thought about taking the imperial examination, so please respect yourself, Miss Chen." Kui Hejin's body was filled with oppressive cold energy and all of it struck Chen Huidi. Chen Huidi staggered and took 2 steps back. She has never seen such a careless person. The more desolate Kui Hejin became, the more unwilling Chen Huidi became. She has both beauty and talent, and even the young masters of the Wei family fall in love with her. Why is this countryman unmoved by her? She was as scheming as if she had kicked a stone. Mr. Kui, what can your wife give you? Can it be compared with the Chen family? Don't do anything to help you and drag you down. It doesn't matter if you have a wife. If she restricts you for her reasons, you can divorce her. Kui Hejin turned around to leave, but when he heard these words after taking 2 steps, a whirlpool of darkness instantly swept through his eyes. At this moment, the surrounding light seemed to become darker. Kui Hejin's eyes were quenched with a cold light, as if she was piercing. Chen Huidi, she is my wife, and nothing in the Chen family can compare with her. And Miss Chen, as a woman, can say such a sentence so easily that I have to doubt the Chen family's tutoring. But what about the Chen family? What does it have to do with me? If Ms. Chen continues to pester me or speaks rudely to my wife, don't blame me for being rude. Zhang Ziluo was bored when she saw Chen Huidi like this. The way Ms. Chen conducts herself is really an eye-opener for her. She wished she could go forward and blast this Miss Chen. At first, when Chen Huidi came to see Kui Hejin, she was actually a little unhappy. But Kui Hejin made it clear to her from the beginning that they were only a couple in name. So even if she is unhappy, she can't interfere. She just watched and listened in the dark. Thinking that if Chen Huidi plotted against Kui Hejin, she would take action when Kui Hejin was unable to guard against it. Who would have thought that Kui Hejin would show no mercy to Chen Huidi? Especially when listening to Kui Hejin's words to defend her, the corners of Zhang Ziluo's mouth raised slightly. She knew he was good. Kui Hejin didn't pay attention to Chen Huidi's insistence at all, and even warned her before leaving. Chen Huidi was very unwilling, her face was livid with anger, and she stood there for a long time. Zhang Ziluo hid her figure at the entrance of the alley at the corner. After Kui Hejin walked out, she breathed a sigh of relief. But just in front, Kui Hejin seemed to feel something, and there seemed to be a faint fragrance in the air. He looked condensed and stopped. As soon as he turned around, he could see Zhang Ziluo leaning against the wall in the alley next to her. Zhang Ziluo was worried. She thought Kui Hejin would find her. How would she explain it then? Say that she showed up by chance, or that she just came to take him home for dinner. Will he believe it? Just when Zhang Ziluo was worried, Kui Hejin did not turn around and continued to walk forward. Zhang Ziluo breathed a sigh of relief. She was in no hurry to go back. She knew that the young master of the agency, Mr. Wei, would lead his men to use force against Kui Hejin. She wants to deal with those people here. At this time, Chen Huidi was very unwilling, her face was livid with anger, and she stood there for a long time. But after a while, a young man in black robe ran over, followed by several guards about his age. The young man has strong skin, sharp eyebrows, and starry eyes. When he speaks, he has an unruly dandy air. Who dares to steal someone from me, young master, you may die. That's right, who doesn't know that, young master, you are the little bully in our county. If someone dares to rob someone you see, you should give him a lesson. The people following him complimented the young master. Chen Huidi started crying in front of Wei Xingyi. Deliberately speaking clearly, Wei Xingyi thought it was Kui Hejin who bullied Chen Huidi. I really didn't mean anything else. How could I have imagined that he would talk like that and threaten me? Ugh. What do I do? Young Master Wei, I am just a weak woman. Chen Huidi's words misled Wei Xingyi. Wei Xingyi was immediately aroused and said proudly, "Don't cry. Don't worry, I will definitely seek justice for you. Teach this Kui Hejin a lesson. He is such a blind person, he dares to bully you. You are so weak and kind, and he is so unbearable as a man. I will definitely bring someone to give him a good beating to help you vent your anger." After Wei Xingyi made his guarantee and promise, he followed Chen Huidi's guidance and chased Kui Hejin in the direction he left. Unexpectedly, as soon as they rounded an alley, a figure suddenly appeared in front of them. Without saying a word, Zhang Ziluo hit Wei Xingyi and the others directly. Penpenpen. Zhang Ziluo's movements were fast, ruthless and accurate, giving Wei Xingyi and the other four no time to react. If she can take action, Zhang Ziluo will never talk nonsense. Who is this little lady who dares to attack us? Stop it! Zhang Ziluo didn't listen to them at all, and soon, the three subordinates behind Wei Xingyi fell to the ground. Wei Xingyi held two hammers in his hands and struck Zhang Ziluo hard. Since you are seeking death, don't blame the hammer in my hand for being blind. How could he have imagined that a frail little lady suddenly appeared in front of him and could be so strong? End of chapter. The space doctor became the favorite of the exiled powerful minister. Author, Fenyuan Kandi. Chapter 85. Chapter 85 Strong. Zhang Ziluo's lips curled up coldly, then let's see who is more powerful. As he spoke, his attacks became faster and faster. Wei Xingyi was stunned when he saw the young lady's skills in front of him. He was born with supernatural powers and his father had high hopes for him. When I went out with the family agency and encountered robbers, I could fight off many robbers with just 2 hammers. Among the younger generation of the agency, no one is more capable than him in martial arts. In the entire county, he can beat down those gangsters by himself, and no one dares to mess with him. Unexpectedly, he would feel pressure when a young lady took action today. This man looked light and airy, but every movement seemed to restrain him. Zhang Ziluo is naturally not as strong as the people in front of her who are born with supernatural powers, but she is flexible and uses Tai Chi and ancient martial arts to overcome strength with softness. So even if Wei Xingyi is strong, Zhang Ziluo can restrain him. Furthermore, she knows the acupuncture points of the human body, and the place where the silver needle can take away part of Wei Xingyi's strength. Yu. Wei Xingyi's physical strength changes were most obvious to him. His eyes widened with an expression of disbelief. Soon, the hammer in Wei Xingyi's hand fell to the ground, and Zhang Ziluo pushed him to the wall. Who did you just bring with you to teach someone a lesson? Wei Xingyi was in a daze at this time and did not recover at all. He instinctively replied, "Teach that Mr. Kui a lesson." Zhang Ziluo narrowed her eyes dangerously and pushed his head against the wall. Penpenpen. Of course Zhang Ziluo controlled her strength and would not cause him to bleed or cause death. The 3 men lying on the ground, who were Wei Xingyi's followers, were still wailing in pain. Seeing the scene at this time, everyone showed a horrified look. Their all-powerful young master was actually held down and beaten by this thin little lady, completely unable to resist. This little lady looks like she is 14 or 15 years old. How can she be so strong? They were so frightened that they didn't even dare to cry out. Who do you think you want to teach? The coldness in Zhang Ziluo's voice made people shiver all over, and they couldn't help but become vigilant. Wei Xingyi was not stupid at all. He was just shocked and couldn't recover. At this time, he quickly came back to his senses and said, "Woman, please forgive me. It was Master Kui who bullied Miss Chen, so I thought of teaching him a lesson." Zhang Ziluo said coldly, "Have you seen him bullying others with your own eyes?" Wei Xingyi shook his head, "Although I didn't see it with my own eyes, it was obvious that Miss Chen was bullied to the point of crying by him." Zhang Ziluo snorted coldly, "I don't know the truth, I haven't seen it with my own eyes, and I am being used and played around by a woman. It's really stupid. My husband came out of school and went home for dinner in good condition, but Miss Chen actually blocked people and forced my husband to take the science test and marry her. Do you think this is what people do?" After hearing this, Wei Xingyi's eyes widened. How could it be possible? Miss Chen has such a kind and weak temperament, how could she? He didn't believe how such a beautiful woman in his heart could do such a thing. Zhang Ziluo mocked, "Then why does she appear here in the school? My husband didn't go to the Chen family to look for her, right? When Wei Xingyi heard it, it seemed like this. No. No, you are Master Kui's wife, and you are actually married. Is this little lady old enough to have hair? How come she got married? She is a tough woman, and I don't know if Master Kui can stand it. Zhang Ziluo didn't want to talk to Wei Xingyi at all. I'm warning you, if anyone dares to do anything to my husband, I will take it back even harder. Wei Xingyi hurriedly said, no, no. He now has a headache and aches all over his body, so how can he dare to do anything? A man is capable of bending and stretching, but he is not as knowledgeable as a woman. Moreover, Mr. Kui has a wife, so naturally he will not compete with him for Miss Chen. A man keeps his word, remember what you say. At this moment, Zhang Ziluo looked domineering, and her words made people shudder. I feel like she has the killing aura on the battlefield. Wei Xingyi kept nodding in a daze. Zhang Ziluo then let go of Wei Xingyi, and then glanced coldly at the three people on the ground. The three people trembled and hurriedly said, thank you, heroine, for sparing your life. Heroine, don't worry. We will never dare to do anything to Mr. Kui in the future. Zhang Ziluo threatened them before returning home. The three people saw Zhang Ziluo leaving and quickly got up carefully and came to Wei Xingyi's side and said, Master, are you okay? Young master, it's because we are weak that you are bullied. Normally they are not so weak, they think they are strong. But after fighting this little lady once, they realized that they were weak, and they must practice martial arts diligently when they go back. Wei Xingyi didn't come back to his senses for a while. When he came back to his senses, his eyes suddenly burst into bright stars. Don't you think she is amazing? The Wei family has been traveling as escorts all year round, and they only worship the strong. Only those who are truly strong and strong in Kung Fu can survive. Even if he wants to be the head of the agency, he must also be extremely skilled in martial arts so that he can be convinced. Otherwise, the people in the agency will not be protected at all. The three of them didn't know what the young master was thinking, so they just trembled and said, yes, it's very strong. The female yaksha is not like a little lady at all, and she is also very strong. This is what the head of the family often calls a true person who doesn't show his face. The three people started to complain. Wei Xingyi suddenly became energetic and said, it would be great if she could teach me Kung Fu. He felt that the little lady's Kung Fu was better than that of his martial arts master. It is a move he has never seen before. It looks weak, but it can restrain the efforts of others. The three followers were so surprised that their mouths were wide enough to hold an egg. They thought that the young master might have had something wrong with his brain after being beaten, otherwise how could he have said such a thing? Young master doesn't have masochistic tendencies, does he? What a joke! If this young lady is allowed to teach the young master Kung Fu, the young master will not be beaten many times a day. Besides, that little lady looks tough, and she doesn't look like someone who is willing to teach others Kung Fu. Master, that little lady is too scary. She just hit the young master directly, and it hurts even thinking about it. Master, don't think too hard. Wei Xingyi didn't listen to his subordinates. My father taught me martial arts when I was a child, and he beat me severely. My father said that it's nothing to suffer a little while practicing martial arts, at least you can guarantee that you won't lose your life. But if you encounter danger while running darts and encounter someone with strong martial arts skills, and you don't have good Kung Fu, you will lose your life directly. At this moment, Wei Xingyi's heart was filled with fighting spirit. He felt that he could not be beaten down by a little lady. At this time, Wei Xingyi's mind was full of Kung Fu, and he had completely forgotten about Miss Chen. His subordinates would not mention it at this time. In the past, Wei Xingyi thought he was very strong and became lazy. This will make you realize that his strength is still very weak. Zhang Ziluo would never have thought that after she taught these people a lesson, they would start practicing martial arts diligently every day. Zhang Ziluo originally wanted to go to the meat stall, but she couldn't care less at this time and could only go home quickly. But halfway through, I suddenly saw Kui Hejin. At this time, Kui Hejin was sitting on a stone bench under a big tree. He heard the voice and looked towards Zhang's Hiluo. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Space Doctor became the favorite of the exiled powerful minister. Author, Fen Yuan Candy. Chapter 86. Chapter 86, Capturing People. The moment Zhang Ziluo saw Kui Hejin, all the blood in her body seemed to be solidified. There is a feeling of being caught and guilty. But when I thought about it, Kui Hejin had already left at that time and had no idea what happened. She felt relieved. Zhang Ziluo walked over and said as if nothing happened, "Why are you sitting here? Why didn't you go home directly after class?" Zhang Ziluo's voice was soft, but she didn't look at Kui Hejin's expression. I always felt that his eyes were a bit fascinating, as if he could see through people's hearts. Kui Hejin looked at her, lowering her head like a little girl and kicking the stones at her feet. He raised his eyebrows with a deep mist in his eyes, and said, "King Grun, I'm tired from walking, so I just want to take a rest here. This tree and the stone bench under the tree are all for passers-by to rest. Many people will take a rest here when they are tired from walking far away or in the town. But it is already noon now, and the people who were doing farm work in the fields have all gone home. There is no one around, and only Kui Hejin is sitting here." Kui Hejin said in a clear voice, "Are you done with going to town?" Zhang Ziluo nodded and said with a very well-behaved look, "Well, after the land deed has been purchased and the yamen has stamped it, we can find someone to help build a house when we return home. But someone is in trouble." Zhang Ziluo shook her head and said, "No, the yamen does things very quickly, but I still want to do some other business and walk around the town. If nothing else happens, let's go home and eat first." "Good." In this way, the two people continued walking towards the village. At noon, Ms. Kui had already prepared the meal. After finishing the meal, she sat at the gate of the fenced yard, peeling peanuts while sitting. There are still some peanuts harvested last year at home that have not been peeled. Mainly because Ms. Kui was worried and looking forward to it. She couldn't stay at home, so she wanted to wait for Ziluo to come back at the door. "I don't know how the land deed is handled. Of course I thought that once I had it done, I could quickly build a house. Build a big house and it would be so comfortable to live in it." Ms. Kui is also full of expectations. Just when Ms. Kui kept looking towards the street entrance, she saw Kui Hejin and Zhang Ziluo coming back. Ms. Kui stood up happily. She carried the basket into the house, quickly washed her hands and took out the cooked food from the pot. Ms. Kui heated up white noodle dumplings, stir-fried a plate of cabbage, tofu, and stewed a pot of mushroom soup. When the food was put on the table, Kui Hejin and Zhang Ziluo entered the room. Ms. Kui said, "Lunch is ready. You can wash your hands and eat together." Ms. Kui scooped water into the basin so that the two of them could wash their hands. Zhang Ziluo went into the house, handed the red land deed stamped by the yamen to Ms. Kui, and said, "Mom, it's all done. This is the land deed for our house." Ms. Kui looked at it, excited and happy. "It's great, we can build a big house." Zhang Ziluo nodded and said, "Well, we can arrange for people to build a house in the afternoon. I have also drawn the architectural drawings." The architectural drawings of the house drawn by Zhang Ziluo, including the design and furnishings of each house, can be built directly by craftsmen. Ms. Kui was very happy. Kui Hejin had already washed her hands at this time, and Zhang Ziluo also went to the yard to wash her hands. When I was washing my hands, the basin was suddenly stained with a trace of blood, making the clear water turn reddish. Zhang Ziluo was stunned. Kui Hejin smelled the smell of blood, and his face suddenly changed. He looked down, squatted down, and grabbed Zhang Ziluo's hand. "Are you injured?" His voice was not as cold as usual. Instead, it had a hoarse and undulating tone, and there was an aura of danger in the coldness. Zhang Ziluo realized later that there was a small cut on the side of her hand. It did not bleed, but when she washed her hands, the blood stain spread a little. "It's okay, I accidentally scratched my skin." Kui Hejin's picturesque eyebrows were slightly raised, and the ends of his narrow eyes were stained with a trace of blood. He looked deeply at Zhang Ziluo. Zhang Ziluo didn't know why she couldn't resist such a captivating look. Maybe he lied because of a guilty conscience. She didn't expect that Kui Hejin, who usually looked gentle and cold, would have such a heavy oppressive aura at this time. She felt like she was under a lot of pressure. Kui Hejin finally sighed and said nothing. He just helped Zhang Ziluo treat the wound and then bandaged it for her. "You are not allowed to touch the water for these 2 days. Whatever you need to do, I will do it when I come back." Zhang Ziluo wanted to refute, but when she raised her head and saw Kui Hejin's condensed expression, she could only say obediently, "Oh." She was so obedient just because she didn't want to make him unhappy or worried. By the way, worried, is he worried about her? Thinking of this, Zhang Ziluo felt a little sweet in her heart. After Zhang Ziluo sat down at the dining table, Ms. Kui also noticed her hands and her expression changed. "Ziluo, what's wrong with you? Are you injured? Who bullied you?" Looking at Ms. Kui's worried and nervous expression, Zhang Ziluo explained, "I accidentally cut my hand. It's just a small wound, nothing wrong." This injury was nothing at all, she didn't feel anything at all. But the feeling of being cared about is really different. It feels like home, someone cares about her. She thought that maybe when she started, her hand accidentally touched Wei Xingyi's hammer. His hammer had a thorn on it, and it was accidentally scratched. Ms. Kui still said nervously, "That hurts my right hand, so don't be tired and don't exert your strength. Let Hejin take care of you." Zhang Ziluo thought, not so delicate and weak. Of course, in that ancient life, if she accidentally touched a hard object with her finger, she would have to tell him weakly and pretentiously. It always made him feel distressed for a long time. At that time, he really felt sorry for her. Just when Zhang Ziluo was thinking about something, there were some more vegetables in the bowl in front of her. It was the dish Kui Hejin brought her. He then took a new bowl and scooped out a bowl of mushroom soup for her. "It's a bit hot, drink it slowly." Zhang Ziluo was simply flattered. She knows best how cold and ruthless Kui Hejin is in this life. She didn't have much expectation that Kui Hejin would be special to her. Who would have thought that he would pick up vegetables and spoon soup for her? Zhang Ziluo was slightly moved and looked at Kui Hejin with watery eyes. She originally thought Kui Hejin was cold and ruthless to her. It can be seen that after seeing his attitude towards Chen Huidi, and comparing it, she realized that Kui Hejin usually had a cool and cold appearance, which was also good. Seeing that his wife was silent, Kui Hejin thought she was uncomfortable, so he lowered his voice and asked, "What's wrong? Are you feeling uncomfortable somewhere?" Zhang Ziluo sniffed, shook her head and said, "No, I just want to eat some cake." The steamed buns just taken out of the pot were still a bit hot to the touch. Kui Hejin picked up the steamed buns, broke off a small piece, blew on it, then carefully picked up a piece of clean gauze to wrap the corners of the steamed buns, and handed them to Zhang Ziluo for convenience. She took it. "This way it won't be hot to your hands. Please give me a monthly ticket." End of this chapter. The space doctor became the favorite of the exiled powerful minister. Author, Fenyuan Kandi. Chapter 87. Chapter 87 Labor, please give me a monthly ticket. Zhang Ziluo felt a surge of warmth in her heart, and there was an indescribable sourness in her eyes. She blinked her eyes and suppressed many complicated emotions. "Start to eat quietly. Even if he has no memory of his previous life, even if he has a cold and indifferent temperament in this life, he still has a gentle side. She knew he was good. It's no wonder that Chen Huidi wanted to pull him down from the altar and wanted him to have the 7 emotions and 6 desires of the world. Zhang Ziluo reached out to take the white flour pastry, and her fingers accidentally touched Kui Hejin's cool fingers, which gave her a feeling of numbness and electric shock. He can always have a different influence on her. Mrs. Kui watched from the side and was very happy that her son knew how to take care of his daughter-in-law. The smile almost overflowed from her eyes. She felt that her son treated Ziluo a little differently. Zhang Ziluo lowered her head and ate quietly. When the food in the bowl is almost eaten, Kui Hejin will give her another piece of food. This meal was almost eaten under the care of Kui Hejin. She felt warm and a little embarrassed. Because Mrs. Kui is still present. But fortunately, Mrs. Kui didn't look at her. Mrs. Kui was afraid that her daughter-in-law would be uncomfortable, so she kept her head down while eating, but the corners of her mouth were raised high. Oh, she is really happy. She feels the food is delicious even when she eats, and she has a great appetite. After having a full meal, Kui Hejin helped pack things. Seeing that it was getting late, he went to school. Before he went out, he still looked at Zhang Ziluo worriedly and said, "Don't use force with your hands, and don't get wet." At this time, Zhang Ziluo nodded very obediently and said, "Okay." Kui Hejin gave a few more instructions before going out. Zhang Ziluo discussed with Mrs. Kui, "Mom, if we build a house, should we ask the villagers for help? How are we usually arranged?" Zhang Ziluo didn't know much about building houses in the village. Mrs. Kui said, "Generally, you need to hire carpenters and masons. If you build a house, you will be paid every day. Then you need to ask the villagers to help and take care of the food." Zhang Ziluo was stunned. "Aren't you going to pay the villagers?" Mrs. Kui said, "With the conditions in Donghe village, everyone is building and repairing houses. How can we afford wages? We all help each other. We only need to provide lunch and dinner." This is also something that Mrs. Kui learned after coming to the village. Zhang Ziluo wanted to pay her wages, but after thinking about it, if she paid her wages and took care of the food, she would break the customs and rules of the village. If someone builds another house, will everyone in the village get paid? Many people may not be able to save even 1 tael of silver after working hard for a year. Zhang Ziluo thought about it and said, "Mom, tell me, if we don't care about food, can we just pay wages? I feel that if you are in charge of the food, you will have to hire a lot of people, and you will have to worry a lot just to take care of the food. It is better to pay the workers to save trouble, so as not to break the rules of the village." Mrs. Kui's expression changed and she said, "Ziluo, you are still thoughtful. This is also the case in other villages. If you are willing to pay wages, you can ignore the food. Actually, everyone is more willing to ask for wages, but the conditions of the people in the village are not very good. If we can't pay wages, we have to take care of the food. In fact, Guan's food is very ordinary. The staple food is multi-grain corn buns, and the vegetables are all grown in his own land. There are at most 1 or 2 pieces of meat in a plate." When Zhang Ziluo heard this, she knew what she was thinking. "Mom, what do you think is a reasonable wage for us to pay per day?" Mrs. Kui said, "I have inquired about it. In those big villages, people with good conditions do not pay wages for food. They only pay 10 cents a day at most. In a village like Donghe village, no one can pay for wages, so everyone helps each other and works for free." Zhang Ziluo was a little surprised when she heard that it was 10 cents. But think about the people who carry goods on the docks and do hard work as long-term workers for wealthy families. Their wages are only 20 or 30 cents a day at most. There are too many idle manpower at this time, and labor is very cheap. Besides, during the off-season period, so many laborers want to go to towns and counties to find work, but they cannot find any work. It doesn't matter if you work hard, no one will use it. Zhang Ziluo did the math and said, Mom, after we bought the land, we only had 18 taels of silver in our hands. But not counting the money for hiring craftsmen, we just asked the villagers to help build the house. Calculated at 10 cents a day, you can hire more people and try to build the house as soon as possible. Mrs. Kui thought about it and said, well, if we don't care about the food, we can invite more people. We can discuss this with Li Zheng. Your Aunt Zhu's father and brother are good at carpentry, and they also know masons. You can invite them. Help. How much is a good day's wages? Like a carpenter or mason, if you don't care about food, you should be able to earn 50 cents a day. Zhang Ziluo knew that Zhu's natal family was in Xinshan village, and she also thought of her parents. If you are thinking about building a house, you can also talk to your parents. She hasn't visited her parents' house for a long time, and she misses her parents, brothers and sisters a little, and doesn't know how they are doing. Even now that her family's life is better, she can't help but miss them. Seeing that Zhang Ziluo was a little distracted, Mrs. Kui's mind was quick, and she suddenly thought of something and said, Ziluo, I don't have anything to do in the afternoon anyway, so we are also thinking of inviting more people to come over to do things, maybe using people from Xinshan village. Why don't you go back to your parents' home and visit your parents? Fathers and mothers can't help but miss their daughters. You can feel more at ease when you go home and see them. It just so happens that your grandma Zhao brought some white flour dumplings and a few more. I'll put them in a basket for you and you can take them back to your parents to eat. At this time, it is fashionable to carry white dough dumplings in a basket when going out. Speaking, Mrs. Kui got ready for Zhang Ziluo. Zhang Ziluo was grateful to Mrs. Kui. So I didn't refuse. Mrs. Kui prepared 6 white flour dumplings and a basket of eggs for her, with a large piece of marinated braised pork on top. The braised pork has been braised before and is hung on the eaves to dry. Zhang Ziluo looked at Mrs. Kui and wanted to say something. Mrs. Kui waved her hands and said with a smile, talk to your family more and don't be in a hurry to come back. I will also go and talk to Li Zheng in the afternoon about hiring people to build a house. Zhang Ziluo smiled sweetly and said, Mom, thank you. She was truly grateful to Mrs. Kui. Mrs. Kui's eyes were hot. Silly boy, we are all a family, how can I say thank you to my mother? She also has a daughter, but when the Kui family was exiled, the daughter was already married and did not need to be exiled. But the Kui family is no longer the Kui family before. Even if the daughter is not exiled, she may still be affected. I don't know what's going on. Afraid that she would be wronged and would have no one to help or protect her. She was very worried and sometimes woke up in the middle of the night. Comparing herself with others, she would also understand Ziluo's parents. She thought that with such a close distance, Ziluo could go back and take a look, so that her parents would feel more at ease. End of this chapter. The space doctor became the favorite of the exiled powerful minister. Author, Fenyuan Kandi. Chapter 88. Chapter 88 Mother's Family. Zhang Ziluo carried her things to Xinshan village. When Zhang Ziluo went there, it was when the villagers had lunch and rested and were getting ready to go up the mountain. Many people in the village saw Zhang Ziluo and smiled enthusiastically and asked, "Oh, Ziluo is going back to her parents' home. It's Ziluo. She looks different now that she's married. She looks much better." The villagers greeted Zhang Ziluo, and Zhang Ziluo responded enthusiastically. "Yes, Aunt Li is going to work in the fields, and Daodu can help with the work. Aunt Lin, you are looking younger and younger. My husband's family is very good to me. Life is comfortable and I look much better." Zhang Ziluo also speaks highly of Mrs. Kui and Kui Hejin outside the home. She also didn't want people to say anything bad about Mrs. Kui and Kui Hejin. The villagers were also happy for Zhang Ziluo after hearing this. Even the children playing on the streets of the village happily called Zhang's Hiluo when they saw her, Sister's Hiluo. Sister's Hiluo is back. Zhang's Hiluo saw everyone and wanted to take out some candies. But the previous maltose has been sold out, and since she hasn't made any maltose during this period, she doesn't have any of it. But seeing the innocent and cute looks of the children, Zhang's Hiluo felt soft. After thinking about it, she took out some peanuts and handed them to them and said, "This is fried peanuts, take it and eat it. This is roasted peanuts 2 days ago. When making peanuts, I left a little space for them. It just so happens that this will be taken out for the children to eat." As soon as the children heard this, they quickly ran over to get the peanuts in front of Zhang's Hiluo. "Thank you, Sisters Hiluo. Sisters Hiluo, we all miss you. Sisters Hiluo, we haven't seen you for a long time. Sisters Hiluo, can you come back often now that you are married? Sister Chengxia will only come back during the Chinese New Year." The children asked Zhang's Hiluo some questions. Their eyes were innocent and they didn't know much about adult matters. Zhang's Hiluo smiled and explained patiently, "Of course, my mother-in-law and husband are very nice, and they helped me prepare the things I brought, so I can come home often. When you grow up and marry a wife, you should also treat her well. Do you understand?" The children naturally understood the meaning of marrying a wife. After listening to Zhang's Hiluo's words, they all ran away shyly. Zhang's Hiluo shook her head and smiled. She also felt a little bit of emotion in her heart. This is how people think in this era. Married women rarely run to their parents' homes often. There are really very few people as enlightened as Mrs. Kui and Kui Hejin. When Zhang's Hiluo entered the house, only Ye and 5-year-old Zhang Yongxuan were at home. Xian was sitting on a pony and picking wild vegetables carefully, while Ye was drying dandelions. Hearing the sound, Xian suddenly raised his head. When he saw Sister A's figure, he stood up excitedly and ran towards Zhang's Hiluo. The voice was clear and soft, "Sister, sister." Hearing such a sweet and cute voice, Zhang's Hiluo's heart almost melted. Zhang's Hiluo knelt down and hugged Xian. The 5-year-old boy is delicate, thin, and not strong. Just holding him makes Zhang's Hiluo feel light. She knew that there were many younger brothers and sisters in the family, and they often didn't have enough to eat, so they would naturally be much thinner than normal people. Zhang's Hiluo felt a little distressed when she saw her brother. Especially when he held her and relied on her, Zhang's Hiluo felt even softer. When Ye saw Zhang's Hiluo coming back, she hurriedly came over without caring about the work in hand. "Hiluo is back." Zhang's Hiluo nodded and said with a smile, "Mom, my mother-in-law asked me to bring some things. I'll come back and take a look." Ye looked at Zhang's Hiluo's expression and saw that she must be doing well in her husband's family, so she felt relieved. "It's great that you can go home. You don't need to bring anything with you. Our family's life is starting to get better. I left the silver you brought for your father untouched. I thought I would save it for you and give it to you later." What Ye misses most is Zhang's Hiluo. Zhang's Hiluo could feel Ye's concern for her. She said softly, "Mom, you don't have to worry about me. My family has done some small business and things are getting better. I have made some money and are going to build a house. I just want to go home and take a look." Upon hearing this, Ye was shocked and excited. "That's good, you can finally have your own house." While talking, Zhang's Hiluo carefully put down her younger brother Xian, then followed her mother into the house with 2 baskets to talk. Zhang's Hiluo briefly talked about business matters, and Mrs. Ye was very happy for her daughter. "You don't have to worry about our family. You teach your father how to make maltose. You have many younger brothers and sisters. Everyone will help. When we go to Yanglia village for the market, we will make maltose and sell it at the market. We can earn at least a few bucks per episode. 10 cents. Speaking of this, Mr. Ye put a smile on his face, and there was a look of hope in his eyes, which was a light full of hope for life. She now feels that she can make money, and even if she lives in the village, she will have a bright future. Zhang Ziluo knew that Yanglia village was a large village in the nearby Shiliba village. There was a market every few days, and the villagers in Shiliba village would go to the market to buy something. Most villagers are used to going to the village market to buy things, because the things at the village market are cheap and have a wide variety of products. Few people go to the town to buy things. One reason is that the town is far away, and the other reason is that people think things in the town are expensive. Every year during the 12th lunar month, when buying New Year's goods, everyone goes to the town to buy things. Moreover, if you have something to buy in a hurry, and you can't wait for the village market, you can only go to the town to buy it. Zhang Ziluo knew that if she could earn a few hundred more coins a month, her family's life would be much improved. By the way, where are my mother, father, second brother, and third sister? Speaking of this, Mr. Ye also said with a smile on his face, after lunch, your father took your second and fourth brothers to deliver the bellows to the blacksmith shop. Zhang Ziluo was stunned. Did her father know that he was selling bellows to the blacksmith shop? She was still thinking about coming to her parents' house to talk to her parents this time. Looking at her daughter's expression, Mrs. knew that she knew nothing, so she explained softly, thanks to that kid He-jin, he didn't know how to contact the people in the blacksmith shop. The shopkeeper of the blacksmith shop came to our house specifically to inquire about the bellows. After looking at the bellows, he was very excited and ordered 6 bellows on the spot, each costing 100 cents, and a total of 600 cents. We were so excited at the time that we couldn't believe it. The shopkeeper said that a young man named Kui told him that we have a bellows at home, which can blow wind without manual labor and reduce the strength. Hearing these words, Zhang Ziluo was also touched in her heart. It turned out that Kui Hejin did this silently when she didn't know it. He usually has a cool and cold demeanor, but she didn't expect that he would think about her parents so carefully. At this moment, Zhang Ziluo felt a deep warmth in her heart. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The space doctor became the favorite of the exiled powerful minister. Author, Fenyuan Candy. Chapter 89. Chapter 89 Heavy Rain, Second Update. In fact, Mrs. was really not satisfied with the Kui family at first and did not want her daughter to marry into the Kui family. She felt that her Ziluo deserved a better person. But Ziluo liked it, and Kui Hejin was indeed brought up by a noble family, and his actions showed good education, so they nodded in agreement. Just thinking, as long as Ziluo is happy, that will be fine. Now that Ziluo is sensible and smart, and looks good, it can be seen that her life is comfortable, and she feels a little relieved. Otherwise, she would feel uneasy. Mom looks at Hejin. Although he has a cold temper, he has a soft and kind heart. If you two live a good life, my mother will feel relieved. Zhang Ziluo smiled and said, Mom, don't worry, he is very good. Since the blacksmith shop thinks that the bellows is useful, if we publicize it well, more people will buy the bellows later, but this is a matter of time. Mr. Ye nodded and said, that's right. Your father and I originally wanted to sell the bellows for 200 cents each, but we can't get the price at all here. If the price is too high, no one in the village will be willing to buy it. If for 100 cents, whoever has good conditions in the nearby village may be willing to buy a bellows and use it. They don't understand the bellows now, only after they actually use it will they know how useful it is. It's especially convenient for cooking. Just a few pulls, and the flame at the stove will be very strong, which saves firewood. The weather is getting warmer now, and everyone can't feel anything. I think when the weather gets colder, especially in winter, everyone will buy a bellows. Zhang Ziluo nodded. Zhang Yongxuan helped pour the water and then sat obediently and watched. Even if he doesn't quite understand what his mother and sister say, he still likes to stick to her. After talking about the conversation, Ye started talking about picking dandelions. The medical clinic in our county collects medicinal materials. Some common medicinal materials are dried and sent half-dried. They cost 10 cents per pound. They just collect dandelions. Your sister will pick dandelions and dry them when she has nothing to do. Your third and fifth sisters went to pick after lunch. Zhang Ziluo nodded. She knew that her younger brothers and sisters in the family were all hardworking and capable. Are the medicinal materials so cheap? It only costs 10 cents per pound. Although dandelions are common in the mountains, they weigh nothing at all, let alone half-dried. Yes, she nodded and said, medicinal materials are all priced at this price. Maybe the uncommon medicinal materials are expensive, but we have neither seen nor understood those uncommon medicinal materials, so naturally we cannot pick them. Anyway, I'm free when I'm free. I'm not busy now. I pick more on weekdays and dry them, and I can sell them for 20 or 30 cents. Don't look at these 20 or 30 cents, you can buy several kilograms of coarse grains. And you won't be tired from doing these jobs, you can do them in your free time. For Mr. Ye, if he can make an extra penny, it is also a gain. 1 penny can buy 2 eggs. Zhang Ziluo knew that Ye was used to living a careful life. She has many younger brothers and sisters, and there is still land at home, so she may not have time to go to town every day to set up a stall and do business. Besides, not everyone is suitable for setting up a stall. Even if they have a skill, some people may not know how to do it. If they are not good at dealing with people, they will be afraid of setting up a stall. She had asked her father before, and he also wanted to take some time to do something. In this way, Zhang Ziluo was talking to her mother and brother, and time passed little by little. At mid-afternoon, thunder suddenly sounded in the sky. Boom! Boom! As the thunder continued, strong winds blew in the sky. Ye's expression changed and he said, "It's going to rain heavily." Ye didn't care about anything else and hurriedly went to the yard to take the clothes home to dry. Zhang Ziluo hurriedly helped take the dandelions back to the house, and Xian also used her calves to move the small bench and dustpan home in the yard. He was only 5 years old and had little strength. He could not move so much at once, so he had to move it one at a time. I accidentally fell down and got up quickly. Zhang Ziluo was holding something in both hands and didn't bother to help him. Seeing how sensible he looked, she felt a little sour in her heart. Xian, there are some things that are heavy and you can't move them, just come here. Xian said seriously while taking the things, "Sister, I can move a few more times, so that my mother and sister will have less trouble." Just as I found something to cover the firewood in the yard, it suddenly started raining heavily. Thunderstorms are coming at any time, and they are very heavy. Zhang Ziluo said worriedly, "What should I do? My father and third brother haven't come back yet." Xian also looked outside, seeming a little worried about his father and brothers and sisters. It was raining heavily, and the door of the house was closed, and the rain was seeping in through the cracks in the door. "I don't have an umbrella at home, so I can't pick them up." Xian crossed her little fingers and whispered, "Umbrellas are so expensive." He knew that his parents wanted to buy an umbrella before, and the umbrellas at the market cost 300 coins. 300 cash can buy a lot of food. Even though Xian is only 5 years old, he understands prices and food. Zhang Ziluo couldn't help but think, it's really inconvenient not to have an umbrella. Most people in the village cannot afford to buy an umbrella. In fact, an umbrella costing several hundred pennies is too expensive for the villagers. Even if you don't need an umbrella, no one will buy one. With these copper coins, you can buy a lot of food. Everyone just doesn't go out when it rains. Ye started to boil hot water in a pot, thinking that when Zhang Xiangchuan and the others came back, they could take a hot bath to ward off the cold. She also quickly found everyone's change of clothes in the cabinet. Zhang Ziluo was lighting a fire at the stove, and Xian said, "Sister, I will blow the bellows for you." "I know how to blow the bellows." Zhang Ziluo felt sorry for her younger brother and said, "You are still young. Don't tire yourself out. Sister can play the bellows." "Sister, I will grow up quickly and I can help my sister." "Well, we Xian should eat well and be full, so that we will have strength." Zhang Ziluo said to Mrs. "Yeah, Mom, you can use the money I give you. If you don't have enough food at home, go buy food. Don't go hungry when your brothers and sisters are growing up." "Yes," said, "Mom knows that now the family can make money every day, so she will cook more meals on weekdays." Soon, Zhang Yunhua and Zhang Yunmian came back in the rain carrying backpacks. They were all wet. When they saw Zhang Ziluo, their eyes lit up and they were very surprised. "Sister! Sister, you are back." The two people didn't care about being soaked by the rain, and talked happily around Zhang Ziluo. Zhang Ziluo said with a smile, "You guys should take a hot bath and change into clean clothes. Don't catch a cold." "Don't worry, we'll talk later." Zhang Yunhua and Zhang Yunmian then went to the bathroom to take a shower. Jiang's courtyard is larger and has more rooms. There is a room specially used for everyone to wash and bathe. Zhang Ziluo looked at the heavy rain outside, thinking that if it rained like this, she might not be able to go back tonight. "I don't know if my mother will be worried." Zhang Yunhua and Zhang Yunmian came out soon. Zhang Yunmian said happily, "Sister, we recently sold the dandelions we dried at a medical clinic and made 12 cents. It's just that third sister and I are not very good at identifying medicinal materials. If we can identify other medicinal materials, we can pick more medicinal materials." Zhang Yunmian was very excited to share some happy things with Zhang Ziluo. "Does the hospital collect a lot of medicinal materials?" End of this chapter. The space doctor became the favorite of the exiled powerful minister. Author, Fenyuan Kandi. Chapter 90. Chapter 90 Craftsmanship, Third Update. Zhang Yunmian said, "Not only the medical clinic collects medicinal materials, but also some businessmen from other places will come to us to collect medicinal materials. I heard that they collect it from us at a low price, and then go to the bustling city to sell it to the local medical center to make the middle money. It's the grain harvest season, and many people come to various villages to collect grain. They sell the grain to some grain stores and earn the middle price. Although we all know it, it saves the big guy trouble." Although Zhang Yunmian is only 8 years old, she has a lively and cheerful temperament, is also good at observing and asking about things, and knows a lot about things. "It would be great if I knew a lot of medicinal materials. If I pick more medicinal materials, I can sell more medicinal materials to support my family." Zhang Yunmian's eyes sparkled when he talked about medicinal materials. Zhang Yunhua is a bit introverted and shy. He doesn't talk much, so he just sits quietly and listens. Seeing that there is not much water in the water glass, quickly add water. Zhang Ziluo looked at fifth sister's eyes shining brightly when she talked about medicinal materials and said, "Fifth sister, do you want to learn about medicinal materials?" "Of course I want to, but no one accepts girls even as apprentices. The medicine boys accepted by other medical clinics are all men, and you need to have connections to become apprentices. Auntie Jo in our village wants to send Tiangen to be an apprentice, but it doesn't matter, she won't accept her." Zhang Yunmian knew very well that it was not easy for her to learn something. She even thought about letting her third sister learn embroidery, but learning embroidery from an embroiderer would cost hundreds of pennies a month. She felt that the third sister always dared not look at people because her face was lowered. The third sister is now 13 years old and will get married in 2 years. She thought that if the third sister had a craft that could make money, it would be easier to talk to her husband's family, and it would not be so easy to dislike the third sister for being disfigured. Zhang Ziluo looked at her fifth sister, who was as young as an adult, and suddenly showed a sad look. She touched her hair and said, "Don't worry, Yunhua's face will be fine. I have seen a doctor's prescription before. As long as we find all the medicinal ingredients, we can cure Yunhua's face." When Zhang Ziluo said this, Zhang Yunhua and Zhang Yunmian both looked at her excitedly. "Sister, is it really possible? Can third sister's face really be good?" Zhang Ziluo is sure of this, but there are two medicinal materials that are very precious and are not available in medical clinics. Even if they are found, the price is very expensive. So it is not possible to give Zhang Yun a facial treatment for the time being. And more wood abilities are needed. It is true that the scar on Zhang Yunhua's face is too deep, and healing requires the combination of wood powers and medicinal materials. It's true, don't you believe what I said? Zhang Yunmian said excitedly, "Believe it, believe it. My sister is the best. She taught me how to make maltos, and we can earn dozens of coins every time we go to the market. The bellows my sister taught my father to make is also very easy to use and can be sold for money." Zhang Yunmian looked at Zhang Ziluo with an expression of admiration. Zhang Yunhua's dim eyes suddenly brightened up, as if they were suddenly filled with hope. Zhang Ziluo thought to herself that the third sister was only 13 years old and had 2 years left to get her hair cut. Before she got her hair cut, she would definitely earn enough money to buy the key medicinal materials to cure her face. The three sisters talked about themselves. When talking about medicinal materials, Zhang Ziluo seemed to have thought of something and said, "In this season, if you want to collect medicinal materials, you can pick kudzu root. Some common medicinal materials are only available in autumn, but there should be kudzu root on the mountains during the season." Zhang Yunhua and Zhang Yunmian were both a little confused. "Sister, what is kudzu root?" They had never heard of kudzu. Zhang Ziluo said, "Pure Areolobata is a medicinal material and can also be made into food. I don't know if the medical center recognizes kudzu root as a medicinal material, and I don't know if it will be accepted. But even if you don't harvest it, you can still make food by digging out the kudzu roots. In this era, there are too few types of food that everyone eats daily. Powdered from pure Areolobata can be mixed with grains to make pasta, or it can be brewed into pure Areolobata powder and eaten, which is also good for health." Zhang Yunhua and Zhang Yunmian had never seen kudzu root powder before, and they were confused. When they heard that it was edible, they became energetic. Ziluo Jiangji drew on the ground with charcoal. "The leaves of pure Areolobata look like this, and they will look like this after being dug out. This is pure Areolobata." Ziluo Zhang explained the shape of leaves and how to identify them. Zhang Yunhua and Zhang Yunmian both listened carefully. "Sister, we will pay more attention when we go up the mountain again. We didn't pay attention to such leaves before, because if we didn't understand them, we wouldn't dare to pick them casually for fear that some leaves would be poisonous." Zhang Ziluo nodded and said, "Well, there are many dangers on the mountain, so you should be careful. And after it rains, you can pick some wild mushrooms and fungus on the mountain. After it rains, you can pick more mountain products on the mountain. Xingshan village is built near a mountain. There are several mountains behind it, so you can pick a lot of things." Zhang Ziluo talked to her two younger sisters, and they all remembered it carefully, thinking that they would pick these things after it rained. "You can make soup and cook meals when you come back." Towards evening, when the rain subsided a little, Zhang Xiangchuan, Zhang Yunchu and Zhang Yunzhen came back. 3 people are holding an umbrella. The umbrella was not big. In order to protect the 3 of them from the rain, Zhang Xiangchuan carried 10-year-old Zhang Yunzhen on his back. Zhang Yunzhen helped hold the umbrella for his father and second brother. When they came back, their shoes were soaked, their arms were wet with rain, and their hair and body were dry. So, everyone breathed a sigh of relief. Everyone was happy to see Zhang Ziluo back. After talking about the conversation, Zhang Xiangchuan said, "The shopkeeper of the blacksmith shop is very grateful to us. He said that with the bellows, the speed of forging tools is much faster. Originally, they received an order and said that it was almost impossible to complete it within the specified time, but there were once the bellows is removed, you won't be afraid anymore. He first bought our bellows and said it was very useful. At first, the shopkeeper of the blacksmith shop came to their house to buy bellows. Zhang Xiangchuan's home only had one bellows, so the shopkeeper bought it on the spot and ordered 6 more bellows. The shopkeeper bought it on the spot and used it in the blacksmith shop. It was very useful. Zhang Yunzhen said, "It rained heavily when we were about to come back. The shopkeeper asked us to take shelter from the rain in the shop and said he would let us come back when the rain subsides. The shopkeeper also poured us tea. This is my first time drinking tea." Zhang Yunzhen said excitedly. It turns out that even a blacksmith can afford tea. Tea is usually very expensive, and it is not something that ordinary people can afford to buy or drink. Zhang Yunzhen was thinking about becoming a blacksmith at this time. But he also knew that no one would use them even if they were to be apprentices to people who were powerless. So Zhang Yunzhen could only suppress his inner thoughts. But the way Zhang Ziluo looked at her younger brother, she probably knew that his younger brother had ideas about doing blacksmith work. For people in the village, if they have a skill, they will become decent people in the whole village. Because you have craftsmanship, you don't have to worry about going hungry. End of this chapter.